Hey, everybody, and welcome to Dog Talk. This is our 26th episode. We are still going strong, looking to help and continue to help other people with their dogs, animals, creating relationships in the pet industry as we continue moving forward. I look forward to this year of getting multiple guests coming on our show and covering so many different topics in the pet industry to help build your relationship with your dog. So, as I always start every single one of my podcasts, I would like to say thank you all for watching, liking, sharing, subscribing across the board. If it's not for you guys, these shows would not be happening. So tonight's episode is going to be about don't punish the growl. I think this is a really important one, in particular, because we are starting to come across, and I mentioned this last week in last week's episode, we're starting to come across a lot of behavioral issues in our animals, and as a business of dog training here at Blue Line Canine, and I'm sure across the nation, all the dog trainers are starting to see a lot of their clientele are coming to them with dogs that are showing aggressive tendencies, social issues, fear, aggression, different little things that are out there. And what we like to discuss is some of the things that we find, I personally have found a lot of people are correcting. All right. So just as we move through this, I want to let everybody know they can throw comments into the comment section, and I can read them so that way we can have a conversation and I can answer any questions that we're doing this. But this is, I think, is an important episode to really listen to, especially as we start to come out of the restrictions of COVID-19. We've been shut down. We've been locked in. Our dogs have been under socialized. They haven't been able to see as many people, vehicles, stuff like that. So as the restrictions come off, the COVID-19 restrictions, and there's going to be literally a flush of people out there, we have to be prepared for our dogs communicating to us. All right. Now, one of the things that I've seen, like I said, is dogs growl in communication. And I watch owners literally all the time start to correct their dog for growling. This is not the behavior you want to do to your dog, because your dog is trying to tell you that there is something wrong. They don't feel good. They have an uneasy feeling. They are trying to communicate to you that they're stressed, that there's so many different things going on in this situation. And for you to turn around and essentially correct them for that, what you don't realize you're doing is you're setting your dog up for a later problem. And what we mean is this: if my dog's warning mechanism is to grrr, and I tell them that I don't want that, and my dog decides that they want to make me happy, so they stop growling in general, well, we are now preventing the dog from warning us about an uncomfortable feeling, that they might bite somebody. Don't push them any further. They're stressed out, right? And here's the thing: you correct this. Now the dog doesn't growl, and all of a sudden you put your dog in a situation where they bite. And then you're like, the bite was unprovoked. The bite, they didn't give any warnings. They did. You just corrected it out of them. And that's something that we really want to pay attention to when we're thinking about dog training, working with our animals, is that they're always showing us signs of what they want, what makes them feel good. But we tend to shun their body language, their boisterous communications. We don't tend to reward, or we do it the wrong way. So, for example, breaking this down in this retrospect, right? So dogs are creatures of attention and affection. Anything that gets them attention and affection will be repeated. It's not positive only. It's not corrective only. Any form of attention will get a repeated action. So dog growls, you correct. Dog learns, you correct their growling. So when they're stressed and they're uncomfortable, they can no longer lean to you for their support. Why? You have now corrected the behavior. Now you become a problem for them. So now they're also going to try to evade you instead of trusting you. The growl is their communication. They are telling you something, right? So what we want to do is, when our dog growls, okay, we don't want to ignore it either. What we want to do is we want to focus in on try to figure out, why is our dog showing this behavior? If there's people approaching, tell them to stop approaching and back away. That person might be feeling, the dog might be getting a bad vibe from them, bad odors. Don't let them push through. Don't let their expertises, and believe me when I tell you this, people walk around, I've had that dog before, I know what I'm doing. Don't listen to it, okay? Don't worry about your judgment zones. It's not worth the dog bite. Okay, so let's go through this again. Growling is communication, which means you do not want to ignore it. You do not want to punish it. You want to listen to it. And because of the fact that your dog can't turn around and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, that guy over there wearing the hat, the mask, the hoodie, they're making me feel really weird and uncomfortable. So, yeah, can you back them off? They can't say that to you, right? So what they do is they growl. They show teeth. They show their cackles on their back are starting to pop up. They either want to fight or flight. They're either leaning towards the person or away from the person. These are the things that you want to start paying attention to. You want to look at the fact that your dog is already telling you that something's uncomfortable. You want to look at your environment. You want to weigh out what's important here. Okay. Your dog not biting somebody and feeling more comfortable is what's important. So number one, dog is starting to growl at the people. Analyze what's going on. See what discomforts are going through. I typically recommend, and I say this in every one of my shows, I talk about, is that you want to have a journal for your dog to talk about pluses, minuses. If my dog is showing uncomfortability in a scenario, I'm going to want to write down the most information I can about the scenario when I get away from and get the dog comfortable, because that will allow me to build a future training program for my dog. And that's important to know that you're doing this, if that makes sense, because if my dog is growling at a person wearing a baseball cap, then I know that I'm going to want to slowly introduce people wearing baseball caps around my dog to get them comfortable. So that way they feel more comfortable to approach the person. If the dog is weirded out by people wearing hoodies, then you're going to want to develop your training program to slowly introduce people wearing hoodies to your dog. It's a slow progress, because again, correcting behavior that you don't like is not fair to your dog. That is the most important thing that you have to think about. I don't want to correct my dog from communicating to me. I want my dog to continue that relationship with me, because that's what connects us, right? It's the mutual respect and a relationship that we created to show that we both trust each other to protect one another as we move forward. So the worst thing that we can ever do is shut that down. Communication is key to our animals, okay? So now we have to look at it. So my dog is showing this. He doesn't like hoodies. Now I'm going to set up my lesson plan to introduce hoodies. I can start wearing them myself. I can have my friends and family come over to the house to get them used to it. Putting people that my dog is very comfortable with, putting them in the hoodies. These are different things to get them into that next level. If you find that we talk about in our socializing booklet that you guys can purchase, how your dog might feel uncomfortable about walkers, canes, wheelchairs, automatic doors opening. There are so many different things that can cause discomfort in your dog, especially now that we were unable to do a lot of things with our dogs for the past year, taking them to the malls, just taking them outside. I mean, there's less traffic on the road, so dogs are becoming less reactive to the cars. There's not as many cars, so they're not getting that overwhelmingness, which is sort of beneficial. But going into it, it's important to break down each one of these little baby steps. So again, it's you have to document these things, and I really can't emphasize it enough. And I tell it all the time. I mean, if you got to know me, you would literally see, if you were in my world a lot, you would see that I walk around with journals all the time. I'm literally showing them on my camera. I have just for this show alone, for Dog Talk, I literally have 3 journals that I take notes and put together just for this show here. So I have one that takes notes and after. I have one that does preemptive, and I have one during. So any ideas that you and I are discussing, I literally put in there. So like your comments and stuff like that, I would literally document those comments, and that way I can make the show bigger and better. Now, why do I talk about that? Is because training your dog is always in the same boat as living our lives and bettering ourselves. So you have to think about it along that same field, right? So when we talk about your dog growling, and like I said, it's looking at it as a totality. Your dog is communicating, and if we're shutting down, we've shut this communication down. So now I talk about the training aspect of saying, okay, now we have to get back into, if my dog growls, I need to set up that lesson plan to help my dog through the growling point. Is it something that I can work immediately? For example, if people are approaching, I ask the people to stop approaching my dog. This way, if they stand still, my dog can at least relax to the scenario. They don't feel that you're encroaching on their space, and the dog can slowly gain ground building their confidence and their security and allowing them to introduce each other softly and easily. Now, I talk about that because we tend to forget dogs are predatory creatures, and predators want to take ground. They don't give it up. Okay. The last thing a dog ever wants to do is give up ground. That is a confidence issue. It is a point of it of anybody that's in charge. They stand their ground, as you've probably heard before. Well, your dog's in the same boat. If your dog is on step 10, they don't want to go to step 9, because then they're backtracking. If they go backwards, they're showing weakness. And as a predator, you can't show weakness. It's the worst thing in the world for them. So they're going to become more protective. And again, if you push through their growl, you're forcing them to bite. You're not giving them the choice. And you have to think about it is, why is the dog growling? It's because it doesn't want to actually bite. That's the last thing your dog actually wants to do, is bite you or bite somebody. So when the dogs do that, you have to realize that you pushed them. And you push them too far. So again, if I have a dog growling, I stop what I'm doing and I allow the dog to become more comfortable. Allow them to approach me instead of me continuing to approach them. Because if I continue to approach them, right, now I'm pushing into their territory and I'm threatening them. If I stop where I'm at, if let's say if I'm your trainer or working your dog, or in general, if I'm working a dog that's growling at me, I'm going to wait and allow this dog to slowly approach me. The other big thing I'm going to do is I'm never going to allow the dog to go to my backside. Again, my backside is where I have the least amount of control. So anytime the dog tries to loop around, I'm going to continue to move in a pivot to keeping those things that's very important. So real quick, I have some comments popping up. I want to see what we got here. So Amanda, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Can't wait to get you back over here. And you definitely need to start your journal. Absolutely. So yeah, Costa would be awesome with our new programs with the Canine Country Club, exercising, socializing, small groups, bus trips, everything. I think Costa would really love it. And journaling is going to be the greatest thing out there. Listen, guys, I am not kidding you. I literally journal everything. I have more journals than you can possibly imagine, and I do not allow them to crisscross. I use them for each one of my dogs. I use them for each one of my shows. Every program we do, we have journals for. I even have journals on all the trainers I've trained. Everything we do, it allows you to go back and figure out what went right, what went wrong, and how you can modify. So let me see the next comment. Dog growls and bares his teeth at me at my bedtime because he wants to sleep on the couch, not in his kennel. I'm not worried that he will bite me. I think he is just saying, no, mom, not ready for bed. Once I get him off the couch, he goes directly into his kennel. What do you think and suggest? So a couple of things. One is, so I'm going to have to ask you a couple of questions, Kelly, real quick, just to get a better feel. Where do you feed your dog, and what else do you use the kennel for? Is the kennel only used for going to bed and when you leave? Or do you feed your dog in the kennel, or any of those things? Because what it sounds like is your dog is trying to claim dominance over you and the rules of the house. But we want to make sure that this is also not going into, because some dogs, what they feel is that there's a high level of separation from their owners because we don't take the time to build the value of the crate. So in last week's episode, we talked about making the crate great. Okay. And you have to make the crate one of the best places in the world for your dog. And the easiest way to do that is by feeding your dog's meals in the dog, right? So feed your dog in the dog. No, feed your dog in the crate. It builds the value of the crate, because you have to remember, your dog lives for you. So if you leave and that's the only time they go in the crate, technically the crate is a punishment. But if you are home when you feed your dog, okay, then obviously you're building the crate up because now they're being fed and you're home. There's no major loss. The crate should also be located in a main area of your home where you spend a majority of your time. That way, when they're in their crate, they're not feeling lost from you. It gives them a safe place. So that's something big to look at, Kelly. So only in bed so real quick, going back to your comments, is only for bed, and he always gets special treats only in bedtime. He eats the next to the crate. So I'm going to highly suggest you start feeding him in the crate for all of his meals. When we think about special treats at bedtime, the question comes down to, and I have to ask, and it comes down to this: who determines what is the special treat? If it's us deciding what the special treat is, then that's where the problem comes into play, right? So for example, if I told you that pizza is my favorite food, and you said you gave me a special treat. Well, who determined my special treat? You have to know me to know what makes my treat special, right? And we can't ask the dog what the special treat is. And the thing is that if he's fighting you to go in there, or he's determining those things, technically the special treat is not holding the value of something special, because he's rather fight you on it. The next thing is that if he's fighting you on it by growling, showing teeth before you make him go in there, and then you give him a treat, technically you paid him for being that way. So you have to be careful on when you reward with utilizing food or toys, especially in that scenario. So that's why by feeding them in the crate and showing them that control, the crate is a good place. You're in there for 20 minutes every day when you eat your meals. I'm not leaving. It becomes a very good place for the dog. They have good bedding in there. That is their safe place. They will naturally go in there. They will like to go in there, but there's a good chance that your dog likes the couch. You probably spend, or they probably spend a good amount of time with you on the couch. It smells like you. If they feel you, that's why they're going into it. So that's a way you want to do is build the crate up to be a really high value place for that one. Let me see what else we have here. What about growling when they're playing? Our dogs get along great. But when they're growling noises at each other when they're playing, sometimes they don't show any signs of not being playful. Growling at each other, by the way, not at us. Okay, so Sarah Marie, this is a good question. So since I'm reading it out loud, it didn't really sound that great, but I believe what you're asking is really simple as this. You have multiple dogs in your home. They probably play tug of war together. They're wrestling around. They're mouthing all over, making all these weird noises and growling. And that is just them communicating to each other. The growling, what you would want to pay attention to when you really think about the growl at that point in time, is going to be you'll hear the growls when they are starting to get a certain excessiveness. That would be no different than playing a basketball game, a football game, and somebody, talking a little trash or running their mouth a little bit on the side, like, yo, you want some of this, man? Nothing big deal. Your dog's just running their mouth at each other, having a good old time. What you might want to pay attention to would be is when the growls get a little bit worse. And if you're listening, you really tell when they're starting to get to that enough is enough growl, and that's the one you want to be listening to. And if you can sort of time it, or you're watching it, you can end their play game prior to it crossing the line of excessiveness, where the dogs are just like, I've had enough type of thing. So you want to be careful in that area of the growl, but letting your dogs play in those kinds of things. Again, they're communicating to each other. They're playing, they're having a good time. They're talking a little smack to each other. That's what you're paying attention to, is when that noise crosses the line, and you'll hear it. They will have a different growl for when that line is getting as enough as enough. So again, looking at those different avenues, and I want to go right back to Kelly real quick, is with the crate going back up in higher value, I have to ask a quick question. Is, you were saying that the dog is showing teeth and growling at your hand, and it just popped in my head, is what happens? What do you do to get the dog at the end into the crate? Just that a question of curiosity, just to make sure I gave you the full on right tip with that one. So if you can throw that comment in there, what are you doing to get them in? Are you hooking them to a leash and making them go in? Are you forcefully ordering them in? Are you throwing a treat in there? What's going on? It's getting them from the couch into the crate, just out of curiosity. Because I want to make sure that you're not rewarding a bad step, or if there's a better step for you to try for a little bit. Also, guys, just to go over a couple things that I know it sounds very repetitive. My staff is going to laugh if they're watching a show. They're literally going to say it right now. Remember, it takes 30 days to create a habit, 60 days to enforce it, and 90 days to embed it. So when we're changing a lot of stuff in our dog's world, we have to make sure we understand that it doesn't happen overnight. You can't change one little thing and suddenly see the world completely alter. So that's the kind of thing that we have to look at. Just grab his. So real quick, Kelly wrote back, you grab his collar and he goes in. Yeah. So basically he understands that he lost the battle, and you put him in there. So yeah, you're going to just want to increase the value of the crate at this point in time, and you'll start to see a difference in about 2 weeks. So that's the other big thing that we look at. And that's what we talk about, the 30, 60, 90, is because there is no way you're going to see an immediate change. Same thing, like, for example, if you want to lose weight or you want to change something in your life, it doesn't happen like, oh, I ate a salad today, I should have lost 20 pounds. It doesn't work that way. It takes a while to gain the weight. It's going to take a little while to lose the weight. In this case, in order to change a behavior, you got to remember it took time to build the behavior. So it's the opposite at this point in time. So in this case, it's going to take you about a couple of weeks to starting to feed him in the crate and showing him that you're not taking any crap. If he does give you those things and you have to grab his collar, I would tell you, Kelly, do not give any special treats. He only gets the special treat if it's the single command that puts him in the crate. So if I tell them cage up and they immediately go in there, that's when they're going to get a paycheck. If I have to do anything outside of a verbal cue, they will not be paid. It's just the way it goes. That's a big thing on that kind of stuff. That's where you really want to pay attention to those little things. And we learn that kind of stuff in like the military. If you ever see like a marching band or military marching, or they give commands, left, right, or attention on deck, it's one simple command it's given. It's not multiple. It's not anything additional. That's what you're looking for in obedience. Obedience is the instant response to the command. Okay, we have to think about that. It's the act of obeying is what's getting you there. So you shouldn't be paid for anything that took multiple points, because that means it's on their terms, not yours. Let me make sure I got all the rest of these commands, comments as we come closer to the end of the show. My dogs will growl, trash talk, and make a sneeze sound when they're playing. When the sneeze sound stops, they're not playing anymore. So, yeah, that's very common normally with bullies. They have like deviated septums. They have a little bit more phlegmy things. So a lot of times that kind of it goes with those breeds, thinking about the way they're snarling and building that up. So that's just something to think about there. Let's see if we have any more. What about when they're growling at animals on TV? Costa will do that and start to bark until the animal is off the TV. Mostly dogs. Do you just let her be? So that's actually a great one. So I believe it's called the fear of loss. And basically, if my dogs are doing unwanted behavior, so for example, barking out the windows, barking out the screen door, or let's say barking at the television, what I would simply do at my house if they're barking out windows is I cover the window. Now, I put up cardboards that way if the dog tries to claw at it or something like that, they don't ruin my shades. In this case, what I would do is I put the cardboard up. If you're watching television and your dog is barking at the television, change the channel and change it back. Once they stop barking, whatever you changed, you bring back. When the dog realizes that their barking is causing the channel to change, they will start barking because they want to watch the show. The dog is interested in the animals on the show. They're just trying to say that they're there too, since they don't understand. It's to them, it's a window, right? So by changing the channel, the animals disappear. They're like WTF, and next thing you know, you put the channel back, the dog will understand. That's very simple. Same thing with the barking at the windows or out your door or any of these behaviors. This is one of those big ones that we talk about, where by covering the windows and not allowing the access to it, the dogs learn that if they want to watch the outside and watch people in the property, they'll start to see when they are and when they are not allowed to bark at the window based on those behaviors. So for example, if the dogs are barking at the windows, I cover the windows. Once they stop barking, I immediately uncover the window. This way the dog understands that without me saying a word, they saw that they controlled the view of the window. And it's a big thing is because you remember, everything we've ever self-learned, we learn forever. And that's the neat thing about the way this is going. I think I have a little bit more time here. Our two dogs are growling when they're laying on the couch with me and my son approaches. Is the late at night, during the day is fine, but at night he doesn't want him walking near me at all. Okay, so in this case, so basically what it sounds like is your dog is showing essentially they're owning you, they're protecting you, and they're doing protection mode. I would personally do a timeout for this behavior. This one is very easy to do. Essentially, like I said, I would separate the dogs. If my dogs do unwanted behavior for somebody approaching, wife, kids, something like that, I'm going to put them in timeout. That's unwanted behavior, especially if they have a relationship. If they don't have a relationship, and that's, I guess I have to ask that one too, Jennifer, is if your son is approaching you, your son and dog have a relationship, and now your dogs are just trying to show dominance and control. If they have a relationship, then I would do a timeout. If they do not have a relationship, I would focus on building them up as a part of them and working with them and showing a relationship between your son and your dogs. That way, your dog would lower the aggression, because we have to make sure that the growling is occurring from the fact that the dogs are just trying to be possessive or protective of you versus not knowing your son or being uncomfortable with your son. So we want to eliminate the uncomfortableness and just say, well, if it's this, then you're going to go in timeout because you're not allowed to dictate that kind of stuff. So the other thing with timeouts is timeouts cannot exceed 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, the dogs come out and they go right back to the way they were. You don't scold them. You don't yell at them. You just create the separation for 2 minutes. That means a crate, a small area, basically confined area that prevents them from having full-fledged access. Under 2 minutes is what you're looking for. So after 2 minutes, your dog pretty much checked out and forgot why they even went in there. So you want to be in that 2 minute window to really start to have an influence. And that goes for anything that's unwanted as long as there's a relationship. So say you said there is a good relationship during the day. So yeah, so if they're doing that at night, yeah, they just go to timeout. It's the end of it, and you just call it a day on that one. How about inappropriate chewing, shoes, dog beds? So there's a couple of things when it comes to anxiety-filled chewing. We'll probably have to bring that up in a whole other episode. There's so much that goes into that one, especially teaching the steps. So a couple of things that we look at would be is if you think about, for example, chewing issues, you have to make sure the dogs have toys that you're able to push them onto. The next thing is, are they chewing out of spite, boredom, their breeds? I would have to tell you, I'm going to have to bring it up in a whole nother episode. There's so much that goes into this one. But I mean, to nip it in the bud very quickly, they have this stuff called bitter apple stop chew. There's this little bit of a spray you can spray on your inanimate objects that will help deter the dog from chewing. Now, everyone's going to tell me, I know. I've bought that stuff. It didn't work. My dog kept chewing. It didn't matter. They are water-based products. They do not have that much of a spray. You actually have to teach your dog not to like it. Basically means the best way and easiest and fastest way to do it is you spray a little bit on a paper towel and you put it in your dog's mouth. That way they smell the product, right? The bitter apple, and they get the bitter taste on their tongue. You do it for about 60 seconds, 3 times in a day. And you'll see anything you spray on your dog will just walk away from. If you don't do that, remember it's water-based. They water-base it so that way it doesn't ruin any of your products that you spray it on. But then again, once it goes on those items, essentially, it only lasts for 24 hours, the smell, for your dog to smell it. But the dog's going to just not care. Obviously, the product probably absorbed the bitterness to it. Let me just make sure we have any other comments to answer here. Awesome. That's what we're doing at times. We're not sure. Yeah. So Shane, keep changing the channel. You see that just make sure you change it back as soon as you can. And then last but not least, what if they can't get them in the crate? So I guess we're going to end it on this comment here because we're running out of time. But so Jody, the question I would have for you is, do you use the crate? Do you feed your dog in the crate? Did you build the value of the crate? Like meaning that you have a command to put your dog in the crate, or is it's just a no-go? You never use the crate except for timeouts or something wrong. It's just a question of curiosity I have to ask real quick to answer that one better. If you're not getting him in there, because I have to wait for your comments and I don't want to stop here while the show's coming to an end. If they're not jumping in the crate because of the fact that they're not used to it, you have to remember everything that we're going to use as a negative. We have to build. You have to build to it. So the crate, like we talked about last week, you have to build the crate to a high value, and you have to use it consistently throughout the day. That way your dog sees it as a really good place to go, and that's where your voice and your commands come in. If it's correction, you have to use a firm, stern voice to get your dog into it. If it's a reward, meaning that you're leaving, it's all positive stuff, then you just use a happy voice, okay? I have a Mickey Mouse voice for all my stuff that I do with dogs. So essentially, anytime a dog has ever worked with me and they do what I'm looking for, I'm going to, yeah, good boy, yes, good boy. And that's where you want to be as well. So remember, if it's a correction, cage up. If it's not, cage up. And you want to match your voice and your tones to what you're doing with your dog so they can easily understand what you're talking about. Guys, I have to sign off here. The show is coming to an end. I really enjoyed everybody partaking into tonight's episode. I think it was a really good one. It'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well as all the different platforms for podcasting here in the next 2 hours. If you know anybody who wants to like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel, please check it out. Also, if you follow us on our podcasting, we're on all the different platforms, Spotify, iTunes, etc. Please give us a like, give us a share, let your friends and family know about the show. Have them tune in every Tuesday night live at 7 p.m. on our Facebook channel here to be a part of it. Ask questions, concerns, learn as we bring in more and more guests. Also, tomorrow on the official MJ Solar page on Facebook, we will do my other live show, which is called Stuck in a Truck. So if you're looking for a little bit of motivation, starting your own industry business, you're looking for some tips and tricks on how to become successful, or better yet, you just need that little pep in the middle of the week, go ahead and follow us tomorrow, 8:30 to 8:45. We'll be on Stuck in the Truck on the official MJ Solar page. So go ahead, check us out. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night, guys. Bye.